TV is making TV watchable again. Join us on the Active Kingdom Entertainment Network. Download Taken TV from your App Store now.
Hi, I'm Joe Sweeney. I founded the Acervo Project in response to the growing epidemic of human trafficking and child exploitation. Classifying this as an epidemic is an understatement. Our investigation teams and cyber analysts are tracking child predators every day. We're making a difference, but we need your help. The average age of a trafficked child is just 14 years old. Will you join the Acervo Project team? Donate $14 a month to protect the next at-risk 14-year-old. Pledge your $14 a month at theacervoproject.org. That's ASSERVO.org.
From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to August 1st, 2023, and also welcome to Washington Watch this evening. I'm Jody Heiss, the Senior Vice President at the Family Research Council, and an honor to be filling in for Tony this evening, and thrilled also to have you on board with us as well. Of course, there's been a lot of media attention and coverage about the House Oversight Committee's closed-door interview with former Hunter Biden business partner Devon Archer. And while there still continues to be bits and pieces coming out since then, the full transcript is not expected to come out until later in the week. And so we're going to reserve some of our time to wait until the manuscript comes out. And at that point, we'll be sure to cover all that is disclosed in that transcript. But in the meantime, there's plenty of news to cover. And as you well know, our mission is to keep you informed as to what's happening from a Christian worldview perspective. So let's begin with some of the highlights. Yesterday, President Biden announced his decision to keep the U.S. Space Command headquarters in Colorado Springs instead of following through with the previous Air Force decision to move it to Huntsville, Alabama. Well, the White House claims that the move was not at all driven by politics.
This was really a decision based on one thing and one thing only for the president, and that was operational readiness. He took the inputs of many leaders across the Department of Defense, but when it came down to it, he believes that it's in the best national security interests of the country if we leave Space Command in Colorado.
Well, that was White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby on CNN earlier today. But the question is, can we really believe what he's saying? Well, I'll be discussing this with Congressman Rich McCormick in just a little while. I'll also be speaking with him about an undercover Chinese biolab in California that's recently been discovered with mice that were engineered to spread COVID. Unreal. Speaking of China, I'll be joined a little bit later in the program with China expert Gordon Chang to talk about the growing threat of the Chinese Communist Party's infiltration inside the U.S. borders. It's a lot more widespread than most people think, as was recently highlighted in a bombshell report that showed how Chinese propaganda is being pushed into the U.S. public schools. So I'll be joined also with the head of an organization that published that report. Nikki Neely of Parents Defending Education will be joining me. We'll also talk about some of the other documents that her group has uncovered on how teachers at one Tennessee school district are literally being trained to be prejudiced. You don't want to miss that. And speaking of education, the self-described pro-choice left is apparently not for choice when it comes to schools. A lawsuit has now been filed against the Oklahoma statewide virtual charter school board.
The Archdiocese has every right to run a private religious school on its own dime, like many such schools across the state. But that is a far cry from a state-approved public school, which must be non-religious and open to all and funded directly with taxpayer dollars.
Well, that was Daniel Mock with the ACLU, which filed the lawsuit. I'll be discussing this with Oklahoma State School Superintendent Ryan Walters, as well as FRC's Meg Kilgannon. So, friends, we've got a packed show. And let me remind you, as always, our website is tonyperkins.com. A lot of fantastic resources there for you, as well as, of course, archives of any program that you may miss, or even if you miss portion of this evening's program, you can catch it there at TonyPerkins.com. All right, let's jump into the program for this evening. The White House is denying that politics played a role of any kind in the president's decision to keep the U.S. Space Command headquarters in Colorado instead of moving it to Alabama. And while many suspect that Alabama's pro-life laws, along with Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville's stand against the Pentagon's unlawful abortion policies, people are saying, some are saying that had nothing to do with it. Others are saying that had everything to do with it. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said that it all boiled down to operational readiness, pure and simple. Well, should we believe that? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Rich McCormick. He serves on the House Armed Services Committee, as well as the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. He's a master at all of this. He's also a decorated veteran and an emergency physician who represents the 6th Congressional District of the great state of Georgia. Dr. McCormick, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, Jody.
Well, thank you so much. All right, let's jump into this. The fact is Huntsville scored much higher than Colorado Springs, according to the Government Accountability Office and the criteria that they had. In fact, the top 3 choices for the Space Command headquarters were all in red states. There was Alabama, Nebraska, and Texas. Colorado didn't even come close. So what do you make of the White House's claim that the deciding factor here is all operational readiness, pure and simple?
Well, this isn't the first time we've been misled by the president, certainly. It won't be the last time either, unfortunately. I think we're definitely playing politics. I think that the fact is that Alabama is the right place to be. He doesn't like it because it has pro-life legislation there, because he has a certain senator he doesn't like right now, and I think that's what he's doing right now. But in the end, I really want to make sure that we honor the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, as well as the space program, that we're keeping people safe and sound. This too shall pass. We're going to have other presidents. Hopefully we get this righted over time. But on the big scheme of things, I think we'll get over it.
Well, we will get over it in the long term. I certainly agree with that. But right now, it's a headache. And the thing that really bothers me is the Biden administration in recent weeks has been talking a lot about readiness. And you know, what's your take on the actions of this administration? And I'll specify the actions of this administration versus the words of this administration as it pertains to military readiness.
When they talk about readiness, they're talking about wokeness. Their idea of readiness is getting people divided over racial lines, making sure that people are focused on the wrong things. Their idea of readiness has nothing to do with what I think is readiness. When we talk about readiness in the Marine Corps, we talk about our ability to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy through fire and maneuver, or to repel the enemy's assault through fire and close combat. That's readiness. That's what we should be training for. Unfortunately, a lot of the military training now is focused around identifying people by what they look like, what their religion is, what their gender is, all the things that divide us rather than the things that unite us. When I was in the Marine Corps, it was all about shades of green, and we all bled red, and we all had a mission to accomplish, and that's all that mattered. Were you prepared to do that? This administration has showed that they are focused on anything but that, unfortunately, and that's hurting recruiting. It's one of the reasons that my oldest son recently decided he was not going to apply for the Marine Corps, because he doesn't like where the military is going. He doesn't like the way that the Biden administration is focused on the wrong things, and quite frankly, doesn't want to put his life on the line if that's their focus.
Yeah, and it's those things that you just bring to light that really impacts the readiness of our military. It is not these other. Let me give you throw this ball your way. American readiness, I believe, and I believe you would agree, has certainly declined. On the other hand, China continues to increase their readiness dramatically. In your opinion, has this administration taken its eye off the ball?
100%. If you look at, I just made a bet with the Sergeant Major of the Army last year over the recruitment goals. They stated they were going to make the recruitment goals. I knew because of the climate of the military, we were not going to. He owes me 100 push-ups. I'm going to collect on that for sure. We definitely aren't ready in the Marine Corps with our amphibious assault shipping. We are definitely underfunded when it comes to upgrading our military. we're underprepared to prepare if we go into a ship building war. Right now, they have about 25 times more capacity to build the largest aircraft carriers and submarines than we do. They've invested in their military. They've upgraded their military. They're at least even with us, if not ahead of us in cyber warfare. And we have a long ways to go when it comes to this new enemy that's really trying to outpace us, investing heavily in their military capabilities and espionage and spy and stealing our technology left and right. We're educating some of their best students and then sending them back to China. We're not taking this seriously at all.
Well, frankly, I wish that was one bet that you had lost, but I'm with you. I'm not at all surprised that we lost that. I mean, the recruiting has been horrible, and there's reasons for that, just as you illustrated with your own son. But it's not just the military threat that's coming from China. They are posing threats in so many other areas. And I wanted to get your take on this. I'm sure you saw it recently. Discovered in California was an undercover biolab that reportedly contained mice that were engineered to spread COVID. I mean, and by the way, it was in an area right beside our a huge Navy base there. So you can just imagine if these rice get on an aircraft carrier, for example, and China wants to invade Taiwan. I mean, the consequences of this type of thing, it's unbelievable. And China is doing all this stuff. What's your reaction to that biolab?
Well, this goes back to, first of all, the origins of the coronavirus, where it came from. You can see that Anthony Fauci absolutely lied when he was talking about the origins. We saw the email trails. We've seen the science behind this. Look, I'm an ER doc. I've served during the entire pandemic. I know basic science, and this is basic science. We know the Wuhan lab was planning to study this and develop it. They got out of control. Whether it was on purpose or not, we don't really know, but we do know that they destroyed evidence. They did not allow us to go in and have a proper investigation. People disappeared. There is no evidence of any reservoirs of this disease in any dog species, cat species, bat species, or any other species, despite Herculean efforts by the Chinese government to obtain exactly that. Now we find this lab in California with dead mice, infected mice, all kinds of syringes and disease process, everything from herpes to coronavirus. This is going to be a very interesting investigation. It just came out. I think we're not done with the investigation. I'm very much interested to see if the special subcommittee on coronavirus gets to actually have a hearing with these people investigating that lab and seeing what they're actually up to. And if they do get linked to the Chinese government, what we're going to do as repercussions to punish the Chinese government for all the egregious things they've done to not only the United States, but the entire world. They need to be held accountable.
Absolutely. Well, listen, our time is rapidly getting away from us. But before I let you go, you served personally in Afghanistan. It was this month, 2 years ago, that we all witnessed the Biden administration's botched withdrawal from the country. And last week, the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee that you serve on had a hearing examining this. Real quickly, can you tell us what you heard? What stood out in that hearing?
The one thing that really stood out to me is how many senior level military people actually said, this is not a good idea. The way we're executing this is wrong. It's going to end poorly. And yet the Biden administration totally ignored it. Multiple military officials that are not even named so far have been cited as these anonymous emails that have been blacked out. But we know that over 20 senior military officials were against the way it was going to be executed. We had several actually testify in front of us, including special force guys. And they literally told their commanding officers that this is a bad idea. It was going to go poorly. I'll tell you, when I witnessed what happened from far, far away, it was one of the worst days, quite frankly, in my entire life. I was emotional. It was horrible to watch. 5 of the young men who died that day were the same age as my oldest son. And I hate to see that. We need to have better accountability, and that plan was absolutely horrible, and it starts at the top.
Thank you, Congressman Dr. Rich McCormick. We appreciate you joining us on the program this evening. All right, friends, coming up, the president of Parents Defending Education joins me to discuss some shocking discoveries. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In recent years, Christians have seen an accelerated assault on not just our core beliefs, but their very foundation. Now is the time to build on that foundation, strengthen our faith, and learn how to translate our beliefs into actions that engage the culture around us. That's the purpose behind this year's Pray, Vote, Stand Summit. Believe and engage. Pray, Vote, Stand Summit is a national gathering of spiritually active, governance-engaged conservatives, or SageCons. We'll hear from Christian leaders, worldview experts, government officials, and more. We'll discuss important issues like the sanctity of life, religious freedom, protecting students, strengthening families, praying for our nation, and how you can impact America's future from a biblical worldview. Together, we can believe and engage. Join us September 15th through 17th in Washington, D.C. for this pivotal event. Register now at PrayVoteStand.org.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Jody Heiss. Glad to have you on board with us today. All right, public schools all across the country are just a few days away from starting a new school year, and teachers are no doubt getting ready, as are the students. But preparation these days isn't just about curriculum and school supplies. Preparation for some teachers now involves literally being trained to be prejudiced. That's really the best way to describe what one school system in Tennessee was caught doing this summer. Well, joining me now to talk about this and more is Nikki Neely. She's the founder and president of Parents Defending Education, which is the group that uncovered what happened in Tennessee. Nikki, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure as always. Well, listen, first of all, thank you for all that you are doing, all that you have done to protect children in the classrooms. But now I look at this is a bombshell discovery that you have uncovered. Tell us about the documents that you obtained through this public records request.
Sure. So this is for the Clarksville School District in Tennessee. And as you said, this is a teacher training program. The district took pains to stress that this was voluntary. But at the end of the day, what these materials say is they encourage teachers, administrators to discriminate. They break students into two groups, oppressors and oppressed. And unsurprisingly, when you look at the oppressor group, it's Christian, male, cisgender, which means you identify with the body into which you were born. And the oppressed include things like, LGBT, minority, polyamorous. And so really not only trying to pit people against each other, but also trying to normalize some questionable behavior, if we can say that.
I think that's a great point. That it's really a dual purpose going on. One, to attack one group, white Christians, you specifically mentioned, while at the other, on the other hand, normalizing these phenomenal, unbelievable, quite frankly, disgusting type lifestyles that are trying to be normalized in our country. Let me ask you this, though, in light of what you have found, when it comes to the labeling of certain people as being privileged and certain people, on the other hand, as being oppressed, aren't what we really talking about is in and of itself encouraging prejudice?
Absolutely. I really resent the fact that we have school administrators, public officials that are trying to put people into buckets and make sure that they are, considered members of identity groups and not seen as individuals. I mean, my family on my dad's side is Japanese. My grandparents met in an internment camp. My grandfather's family was hugely patriotic. My grandmother's family refused to sign the loyalty oath and lost their American citizenship and moved back to Japan. That's the diversity that exists in just one family. So to look at me and say, you know what, you're Asian, you have yellow skin, you think this way, I think is a disservice to me as well as to my ancestors. And the fact that we have this being done to us with our tax dollars is truly insult to injury.
It really is. So listen, I want to switch gears, but before I do that, are you seeing any movement now that this has become public? Has there been an about face of any sort in the school district there?
No about face from the school district, but we did flag it for a number of state officials. So we hope that they will be taking action on it, and we will be following up with them if they do not, because this is not an appropriate use of tax dollars. This is not what our teachers should be learning. They should be learning how to teach children to learn more effectively, not teaching teachers how to divide each other and to condescend to students.
Well, absolutely, and that's why we're so grateful that you've got your pulse on this. We know you won't let go of it. But switching gears, if I can, Nikki, last week your organization released yet another bombshell report that shows a startling amount of influence from the Chinese Communist Party in our schools, specifically K through 12. Tell us what you found out.
Yes, I think a lot of your viewers are probably familiar with Confucius Institutes. Those are the programs that occurred at the higher education level. And it's something that under the Trump administration, Secretaries Betsy DeVos and Pompeo were able to rein in because, thanks to the Higher Education Act, there was mandatory transparency of foreign funding in higher education. Frighteningly, no such transparency requirements exist in the K-12 level. And so we started looking into this in March when we identified over $1 million flowing to a high school in Northern Virginia, the Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. And when we found that, we thought, well, is this taking place elsewhere? And if so, where and how much? And after 4 months, we've identified 143 school districts across America. But frighteningly, I think this is only the tip of the iceberg. And so there's a lot more out there, and we intend to continue following on this up.
Well, and regardless of what people think, one way or the other, the opposition here is not about teaching students about Chinese language or teaching students about the culture programs. I mean, we are talking here about American schools that are giving the Chinese Communist Party unfettered access to our children. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Absolutely. This is certainly not to impugn all Chinese language or culture programs whatsoever. We're just saying parents should know who is funding and who is teaching our students, particularly if they come from a hostile nation, so that parents can make an informed decision whether they want their children to participate in these programs or not. Some of the contracts that we saw gave the Chinese government, Hanban, their international kind of influence operation, oversight and control over curriculum, over teachers that came over. Certainly no teacher is going to be able to come over from the People's Republic of China without checking all of the ideological boxes by the Communist Party. And so to us, those are concerning things, and we want parents to know so that they can decide whether this is a fit for their family or not.
Yeah, and I would imagine with that, this is yet another one of those examples that they don't want parents to know what's going on. So what do we do here? What do state and federal officials need to be doing to help correct this?
Certainly. We reached out to many of your former colleagues in the House and Senate. We sent letters to 7 House and Senate committees last week, including the China Select Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committees in both chambers, asking them to investigate this. Representative Jim Banks from Indiana already sent a letter to Secretary Cardona asking for an investigation. And we've also reached out to all of the governors, asking them to wrap their hands around this, because at the end of the day, the governors have oversight over their education systems in their state.
Have you heard back from any of them yet?
Unfortunately not, but I'm going to chalk it up to August recess, and we're going to be following up with them when they get back in September.
Well, Nikki Neely, Parents Defending Education, thank you so much for the incredible work that you do, and thank you for joining us this evening on Washington Watch. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, friends, coming up, there's more on the growing threat of China's infiltration of American society. And you don't want to miss it. I'll be speaking with China expert Gordon Chang to discuss the many other ways that the Chinese Communist Party is working to win its war against America. You don't want to miss it. Stick around. We'll be right back right after this break.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Jody Heiss. Hope you're having a fantastic day. All right, in the last couple of segments, we've talked about some of the threats posed by the Chinese Communist Party, but there's a whole lot more. Friends, a whole lot more. The threats are growing under this administration, which has only been showing weakness on the world stage. Take just for example, the southern border, where we've seen obviously record numbers of illegal immigrants crossing the border since President Biden took office. But the number of Chinese nationals being encountered on the U.S. southern border is exploding. And like many things coming out of China, that ought to be reason for great concern. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Gordon Chang. He's a distinguished senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute. He's the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. You can follow him on Twitter or X, whatever it is now, under the handle @GordonG.Chang. You want to be sure to do that. Gordon, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Jody.
Well, listen, I look at, just for example, I mentioned it briefly, what's happening on the southern border, but just as an example, in 2020, the number of Chinese nationals encountered by U.S. Border Patrol at our southern border was 342. 342 in 2020. So far this year alone, it's over 12,000. What's going on here?
Well, most of the people coming across are who they say they are, and that is they're just desperate Chinese who have given up on their country. But in that number are disturbing individuals. We're seeing packs of males between 5 and 15 in number, of military age, unaccompanied by family groups who pretend not to speak English. We know some of them are performing Chinese military rituals, and we also know that from Border Patrol that some of them have known links to the Chinese military. And so what we are seeing in all probability are saboteurs. These are the guys who are going to be assassinating officials, blowing up power stations, starting wildfires, detonating bombs in shopping centers to create terror. These are the people who are going to wage war on the United States of America.
Wow, and maybe even some bio labs in California, who knows where else. You recently wrote a piece entitled, "Do Not Let China Attack America from America." I think that really is what you're talking about right now. Take this a little further. What do you mean by that?
There are so many different ways that China plans to wage war, and actually is waging war on America right now, because China has this doctrine of unrestricted warfare, which means it can do anything it wants. So there's political warfare, which has been going on for decades, Jody. And part of it is we have the Confucius Institutes on university and college campuses, but even more pernicious, we have the Confucius classrooms in our secondary schools. These are nominally run by China's Ministry of Education, but really are run by the Communist Party's United Front Work Department, which means that they are meant to subvert the United States. But also we have the saboteurs. We have that very suspicious lab that was raided in March near Fresno. And there they found about 1,000 white lab mice who were genetically engineered to transmit disease. They found 20 different types of pathogens. This really, I think, is one of those locations where saboteurs were going to go in anticipation of a war to spread disease.
It's horrifying to consider that. And from what I've read on that, we discovered that solely by accident. I mean, we didn't suspect it happening. Who knows how many other places that type of biolab may be occurring throughout the United States. So I do want to go for what you were just referencing about the schools. Previous segment was talking a little bit about that, and I want to go further with you about it. But before I do, the piece that we're referring to, you actually quoted a NATO official who talked about how the CCP intends to win its war on America without fighting us. So this is not just your opinion. We have NATO officials saying the same thing.
Yes. Kerry Gershonik, the official you're referring to, has been at the forefront of warning about China's political warfare campaign against the United States. And he says, and he's absolutely right about this campaign is comprehensive. China is overwhelming us, and clearly we are not able to defend ourselves. I mean, our FBI is being overwhelmed, local law enforcement's overwhelmed, state and local governments, federal government, they're all overwhelmed. And really what we have right now is China being much more influential in the United States than Americans in their own country.
Yeah, so look, we've only got, unfortunately, about a minute left here. But the whole school, my previous guest, Nikki Neely of Parents Defending Education, we were talking about how the Chinese Communist Party is infiltrating K through 12. This is extremely serious with us. So just kind of bottom line, what does the United States need to do right now, real quickly, in the face of these challenges that we're facing from the CCP?
Remove every Confucius Institute, every Confucius classroom, close the remaining 4 consulates, strip the embassy staff in Washington just down to the ambassador, close the Chinese state banks and enterprises, get the Chinese regime out of America because they're winning and we're losing our country.
Yeah, and I wish we had time to go into this, but we have a president that, for all practical purposes, appears to be exceedingly compromised with China,
whose family has received millions of dollars from China. And that's an admission from Hunter Biden from the middle of March, where his spokesperson said they received, quote, good faith seed funds, which is an admission of corruption, because corruption is the only explanation of why they would have received that money. And we saw another admission from Hunter Biden just a couple days ago in federal court.
Got to leave it right there. Gordon Chang, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch. We're grateful. All right, friends, coming up, the self-described pro-choice left is not for choice when it comes to schools. We'll talk about the latest attack after the break. Stay tuned.
It begins here, and here, and here. Every day. Before you stand, you need solid ground. Standing in a culture that wants you to surrender the truth won't work unless you have a firm foundation. At Family Research Council, we have that firm foundation, and you can find us standing. We stand for the value of all human life. We stand for the right of families to flourish. And every day we stand for your freedom to believe and to live out those beliefs both at home and abroad. We work with government officials, educating them on the issues from a biblical worldview. And when necessary, we hold them accountable. We equip Christians across America to be informed and to take action in their communities. With our daily radio program, television appearances, and vast online presence, we reach people where they are. We envision an America where all human life is valued, families flourish, and religious liberty thrives. And that won't be realized if we're not standing. Stand for faith. Stand for family. Stand for freedom. Stand with us at FRC.
I'm often asked by people, Tony, how do you stay encouraged? How do you deal with all of the stuff in Washington, D.C., the negative policies that are attacking our faith, our family, and our freedoms? Well, you want me to let you in on the secret? It's called the Word of God. And that is why the Family Research Council embarked on Stand on the Word, a 2-year journey through the Bible. It's a chronological Bible reading plan with just 10 to 15 minutes a day. In 2 years, you will have covered the entire Bible. And to go along with this, Monday through Friday, I do a morning devotional that goes along with the reading of the day. It's all designed to encourage you on this journey because the Word of God, as the psalmist said, in my affliction, here's my comfort. Your Word gives me life. That is our source of strength. To find out more, go to tonyperkins.com or frc.org/Bible. And I invite you to join me every morning for our Stand on the Word Bible devotion.
This fall, believers from across America will gather in our nation's capital. We'll hear from government leaders, policy experts, and leading Christian voices, learning how we can engage in government at every level, from local school boards to state legislatures to Congress and even the White House, to win back the soul of our nation. Join with us for the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit. Believe and engage, September 15th through 17th. Register now at PrayVoteStand.org. FRC, celebrating 40 years with Congressman Dan Bishop.
You guys are more important in my daily life in D.C. than you can possibly imagine. I appreciate what you do for all Americans who are of faith and who want to see their faith consistent with and respected by government in Washington. We have an important task. It's not always easy. But every day that you're there doing what you do makes it easier and more possible for me to do what I do. Thank you.
And thank you, Congressman Dan Bishop from North Carolina. We appreciate your comments and happy 40th anniversary to the Family Research Council. What an incredible organization, and I echo those comments from Dan Bishop, and I know many of you do as well. So we are excited to have this 40th anniversary. We ask you to come celebrate it with us on the upcoming Pray, Vote, Stand Summit in D.C. coming up in September. All right. The left loves to talk about being pro-choice or a woman's right to choose abortion and all these sorts of things, but they really are not pro-choice on so many things. They don't want you to have a choice about your health care, for example. We saw that years ago. They don't want you having a choice about disagreeing with them. They would rather cancel you out. Well, there's another kind of choice that the left does not want you to have, and that is school choice. Well, yesterday, a public school advocacy organization called the Oklahoma Parent Legislative Action Committee, which, by the way, consists largely of teachers' union members, they filed a lawsuit against the Oklahoma statewide virtual charter school board. They claim that the board there violated the state's constitution when it approved the first virtual religious charter school, the St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School. In essence, it's the first taxpayer-funded religious charter school. Well, here now to discuss this with me is Ryan Walters, Oklahoma State School Superintendent. Superintendent Walters, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you again.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for shining a light on this issue where we see radical leftists that are attacking the parents' right to choose a religious school if they want to for their children. We're always going to defend a parent's right to make that decision. And again, we see the left trying to take that decision away from parents, and we're not going to stand for it.
Well, listen, I saw a statement from you this morning that it almost made me jump out of my chair for excitement. When you basically said that this lawsuit against the St. Isidore school is that these people are pushing for is atheism as a state-sponsored religion. Please unpack that further for us.
Absolutely. So what we see here is this myth of separation of church and state that the left has used to weaponize the state to attack the religious beliefs. And honestly, just to be even more frank, Christianity and the church. That's what they are doing with the myth of separation of church and state. They are trying to use it to create atheism as a state-sponsored religion by saying no mention of God can be present, no religious actors can be present, and we are going to flush all of this out of the school system. We're going to literally go in and rewrite history, take out references to God, references to faith, references to the church. This is a war on Christianity and the religious liberties that our founders enshrined in the Constitution. So that's where we are going to be clear on this. We are going to defend religious liberty. We will not allow state government or federal government to be weaponized against Christians.
Well, I absolutely could not agree with you more. I just regret that all 50 states don't have school superintendents who understand this like you do. Now, you are in the midst of this right here in Oklahoma. On the one hand, who would ever imagine that this type of battle would come to Oklahoma in the first place? But on the other hand, for other states to have their head in the sand and somehow believe this is not coming to my state, what would you say to them?
Oh, it's coming to your state. It's present in your state. We are in a very red state here in Oklahoma. We're a very conservative state. But what we've seen is the left-wing radicals utilize the apparatuses of the teachers union to push, bully, and intimidate lawmakers and schools into allowing left-wing ideology, into allowing these attacks on schools. And frankly, they threaten these lawsuits. They threaten a lawsuit on me nearly every day. You got the same actors. It's the ACLU. It's the Freedom from Religion institution or organization, whatever their name is. But, what they're trying to do is they try to scare schools. They try to scare elected officials into backing this state-sponsored atheism. And the reality is, the founders were clear. Faith played a huge role in what made this country exceptional. We have to protect religious liberties of every individual so that they can practice and exercise their religion. This is fundamental. If this country is going to continue to be the greatest country in the history of the world, faith must be protected through religious liberty. We have to defend this. It doesn't matter how red your state is. The federal government and these radical left-wing groups are absolutely working together in this war on faith, this war on Christianity. You must find the ways to fight back, find the ways to empower families to be more engaged in their schools, find ways for them to choose the school of their choice. That includes religious options. Make sure that the state is not being weaponized to push the religious community in our churches out of our schools. Because again, if they're able to control and indoctrinate our kids, this is over. We have to be able to allow our kids to exercise religious beliefs. They need to understand the founding of this country and the role that faith played, and they need to understand the principles that made this country great, or we're not going to continue to be a great country.
Well, absolutely. Just while you were talking there, I go back to even George Washington's farewell address where he made it very clear, religion and morality are indispensable supports to our entire system of governance. And he went on and said, you can't consider yourself a patriot if you don't understand the role of religion and morality. And for us to no longer teach that, for us to no longer pass that baton from one generation to the next, is not only damaging for those individuals, but for the health and the well-being of our country as a whole. All right, just real quick, one more question for you. Seeing this battle has come to you in Oklahoma, what advice do you give to other state school superintendents across the country who, like you, are tired of the left running every facet of our educational system?
Be bold. Move quickly. You have to have a sense of urgency. We have kids in our school systems that are being indoctrinated. We have to get this course corrected immediately for the future of every individual child and for the future of the country. Empower every parent with school choice. Make sure that they have rights in their school so that they control what their kids are being taught. Make sure the teachers' unions' power is minimized. The teachers' union should not be running education. Parents should. And then lastly, make sure that you've got good curriculum in our schools that support our history. Our kids should be inspired by this nation's history. Our kids should understand the primary documents, those founding resources and documents. Because again, as you just quoted, if you read our history, there's no denying the role faith played. But again, what the left is trying to do is they're trying to take those parts out of our history. They're trying to have our kids dumbed down so that they don't understand the role faith plays. And then they're trying to weaponize the state against our religious beliefs. So this is where you have to act boldly. You have to take powers out of the hands of bureaucrats and unions, put them in the hands of parents, and defend religious liberties.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Oklahoma School Superintendent Ryan Walters. You're a hero. We love you. Thank God for you. Keep the torch ablaze, my friend. All right. I want to continue this conversation and move over to Meg Kilgannon. She is FRC's Senior Fellow for Educational Studies. And Meg served at the U.S. Department of Education with the Trump administration. And so we welcome Meg Kilgannon back to the program. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Jody. Thanks for having me.
Always great to have you. All right. Are you at all surprised that the Oklahoma Parent Legislative Action Committee is doing what they're doing? And predominantly here, we're talking members of the teachers union. Are you surprised at all at what they're doing?
I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised that they're claiming to represent parents and hiding the fact that they mostly represent teachers unions. And I'm not surprised at all that this is that they are holding this example up as if the state of Oklahoma is going to fire every teacher and replace them with a priest or a nun in the classroom. I mean, you would think that, that it was just the end of anything reasonable happening in Oklahoma. And that is just not at all the case. They are giving parents the option to perhaps, if they so choose, enroll their children in a charter school with a Catholic foundation. And if you could just indulge me, I'd like to read to you a prayer that's about St. Isidore, the school is named after. It's Almighty and eternal God, who created us in thy image and bade us to seek after all that is good, true, and beautiful, especially thine only begotten Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Grant, we beseech thee, that through the intercession of St. Isidore, Bishop and Doctor, during our journeys through the internet, we will direct our hands and our eyes only to that which is pleasing to you, and treat with charity and patience all the souls that we encounter there. Through Christ our Lord, amen. So wow. You had your conversation with Nikki earlier where she talked about oppressors and oppressed and the glorification of all kinds of just degeneracy and just ridiculousness, right? Or you could choose this. And
yeah, I mean, what is the thread in that?
We have to pay for the degeneracy, right? Nobody's giving you an option on that one. That's in the school right now if you're going to public schools. But they don't even want this beautiful, faithful option for parents that they could choose. So this is the time that we live in. This is the battle that we face. we must, we need to make it our purpose to get rid of the degeneracy. I'm not happy with just this choice, though it is an accomplishment, right? I'm very pleased that we're going to have this choice, and I'm very glad that Oklahoma is laying down this marker and attempting to set the standard to make this an option. But we have to remember also that we can't tolerate this nonsense that we have in the schools right now, because it is literally deforming the minds of generations of children.
Well, and that's what you get when you have atheism being pushed as a state-sponsored religion. So, just with that, so what's your take on their argument of separation of church and state?
This isn't mandating a religious instruction throughout the school system. This is merely offering to parents an option for a religious kind of instruction if they would like to have it. So I don't see any issue with the separation of church and state. What the real issue is, they don't want to give up their power over all the schools.
That's right. They don't want to give up their power, and they want to keep pushing atheism. Let me pull up a clip number 3. This is Oklahoma's governor when he was asked about the lawsuit.
I think more options, more school options are good and healthy, and I think that's what Oklahomans want. Parents want to influence, and they want to be involved in their kids' lives. We need more parent involvement.
What do you think to that?
I totally agree. We do need more parent involvement. Parents love their children. They have the best interests of their children in mind. We want schools that are creating an environment that encourages family formation and encourages a true partnership with parents. We are the primary educators of our children, right? So the fact that they are going to, in Oklahoma, dare to imagine the possibility of an option for parents that includes religious faith, I think is a wonderful, wonderful development, and I hope we see much more of it.
I do too. So Meg, let me ask you this. I don't know of anyone who can address this any better than you, but for those parents all across the country right now who still have their kids in public schools, how should they respond to what's happening in the children's classrooms across the country, be it Oklahoma or anywhere else in the country for that matter?
Well, we all, whether you have children in school or not, we all have to pray for families, for kids in school. You really need to be as engaged as you can possibly be. Check the backpacks, read the textbooks, get their passwords for their online accounts. Don't just accept the parent password that the school issues you. Make your kid give you their password and look at what they're doing in their classes if they have an online component, which most do now. You really have to go the extra mile to be engaged as a parent these days, because the education our children are being given now bears very little to no resemblance to the one that we received, maybe even in the very same school building. So there's just no substitute for being engaged. If you can get your kids out of public schools, that's probably the best thing to do, unfortunately, right now. But we can't just remove our own kids. We need to insert ourselves into the system that so desperately needs the love and the joy and the hope that comes from a Christian worldview.
Meg, let me ask you this. We've got about 30 seconds or so left here, but FRC has some great resources, and FRC Action as well, for parents on issues of education. Tell us in 30 seconds what some of those resources are and how people can find them.
Well, you can find some educational information on our website at frc.org, but our school board boot camp is at frcaction.org/schools. And I think it's time for people to pray about possibly running for school board or other offices so that we can, take our country back.
Absolutely. Meg Kilgannon, always great to have you on the program. Thank you for the incredible work that you do. Thank you for unpacking it for us this evening here on Washington Watch.
Thanks, Jody.
All right, friends, unfortunately, that wraps up our hour. It flies by, but thank you for being a part of it. It's our honor to bring you the news from a Christian perspective. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you've heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com. Also, to leave a comment about Washington Watch, call our watch line at 1-866-372-7234. That's 1-866-372-7234.
Taken TV is making TV watchable again. Join us on the Active Kingdom Entertainment Network. Download Taken TV from your App Store now.